Hey guys, this is the Revolutionary Male, and I'm Alex. And today I'm going to talk about an article, I Wore the Pants in My Last Relationship and Ended Up Miserable, by Averi Clements, written by a woman. I'm just going to go through the article and offer my opinions and insights on what I see here. Let's just get started. I don't really have anything else to add. I thought I did for a second, but they're not apparently not. Anyway. Even in the most balanced relationships, there's usually someone who's just slightly more assertive than the other person. But when that power dynamic shifts too much to one side, the results can ruin the relationship entirely. I learned this the hard way when I dated someone who was way more passive than me, and now I know never to end up in that situation again. This is true. This right here is true. There are people, let's put it this way. There are those of us who are more capable of being assertive and leading in personal relationships, workplace relationships, than others. Some of us are more assertive than others. Some of us are more passive than others, which is fine. Some of us have the ability to kind of move back and forth. Regardless, in an interpersonal relationship, specifically a romantic relationship like we're going to read here, it really matters how passive or how assertive each partner is, and what their roles are designated to be in the relationship. Because if there's like an unspoken assumption about what these rules are, and there's never been any real clear communication about it, it can cause problems. Likely, as we'll see here, I would imagine, in this article. So let's continue on. Number 1, he was a pushover. When given free rein, I know I could be a bit bossy. Not surprising. I need to date someone who's as stubborn as I am. But my ex, well, he wasn't that. I'm sorry, that would be a problem. Lady, if you date someone as stubborn as you are, you'll never get anywhere. Because you both can't be leaders in the relationship. It doesn't work that way. Someone has to be able to take a back seat while the other person leads. And if you can't be a woman who's capable of doing that, which it sounds like from the first sentence in number 1 here that she can't. She's bossy. Then the only men who are ever going to date you for any extended period of time are passive men. That's just the way it is, lady. Because you're the guy. You're the guy in your relationships with men. Or let me put it more politically correct way, I guess. You're what is traditionally associated with the male role, leading. If you don't want to lead, then you have to find a way to get into your feminine and to become more passive and not be a control freak. He was a super sweet guy, but he also let me walk all over him. Take note of that. The fact that she's admitting she was walking all over this person doesn't say a lot about her character. So there's that as well. I don't want to date a bully, obviously, well, because she is one, it seems. But the fact that my ex couldn't even stick up for himself made me feel like I was the only one in the relationship who had a spine. Well, probably because you were. But not in a good way. It doesn't sound like it was in a good way. Because if you're like indirectly comparing yourself to a bully by saying you wouldn't want to be with one, then you are. It's like when women put on their dating profiles that they're not into hookups. If you were genuinely not into hookups, it would never even occur to you to put that on your profile, because it just is not a possibility. It just doesn't happen. So you wouldn't have any reason to worry about it or fear that it happens. See what I'm saying? Number 2, he always expected me to be the leader. I don't know that he always expected you to be the leader, so much as that's the role you took for yourself. You said it yourself. You're a boss. You're bossy, is the actual quote. So don't pass responsibility for this onto the guy. Ladies, you need to take responsibility for your decisions. Okay? Just because you're a bossy lady, I was going to say bossy, because that's, I think boss is the term of endearment that so many women use now. It doesn't mean that I don't remember the point I was going to make, so let's just continue on. I got caught up with my own thing there. Whatever. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy being the one to make all the plans sometimes. Interesting. Look at the language there. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy being the one to make all the plans sometimes. There's a contradiction in that sentence, lady. You're not being honest with yourself. But my ex got a little too accustomed to my tendency to lead. You allowed him to get accustomed to your tendency to lead. If I didn't suggest we go on a day trip somewhere, it wasn't going to happen. If I didn't text first, we weren't going to text at all. Maybe this guy wasn't really that interested in you. It wasn't so much a manipulative thing or even a lack of interest for him. I did not read this before, and so it's so funny that she said that. It sounds like she suspected that he wasn't interested in her, or maybe subconsciously or unconsciously believes that he wasn't interested in her. Oh, no. He simply didn't know how to take on the role of the initiator in our relationship. Yeah, because you never left any room for it, lady. And I would imagine that a man like this is probably very familiar with women like you. He's probably known them his entire life. His mother is probably that way. There's no room for him in the relationship to be the leader, to be the initiator. It can't happen if there's no space for it. Eventually, it wore on me, and I became resentful. So you became resentful for the decisions that you made. Don't let women project this crap onto you, guys. Don't let them do it. Yes, you are going to be responsible for the decisions that you make in a relationship like this. If you are a guy like this, as I used to be, although I didn't really date very much when I was like that. You take responsibility for your actions, but don't let women put this crap on you. This is absurd. Number 3, I felt more like his mom than his girlfriend. My ex got so used to me handling everything that he began to seem almost incapable of doing basic things on his own. This I doubt, seriously. I don't think it was so much that he became incapable of doing basic things on his own. He stopped doing them, most likely because you would not let him, and or if he did do them, they weren't good enough for you. That's more common than anything else. So if I'm going to be punished repeatedly for doing things my own way, that I'm capable of doing and want to do my own way, I'm going to stop. Because it's better for my short-term emotional state to not have to get into an argument with you because you don't like the way that I fold the laundry. I had to remind him to pay his bills or call his parents back. Oh my God. Wow. Lady, you're a control freak. You have a problem. I don't read that and think this guy is a loser. I read that and, okay, I don't pay my bill the day that I get it in the mail. Or, okay, I don't call my parents back 10 minutes after they left me a voicemail message. That's what I see. I had to, I read that already. He became lazy, and it was largely my own fault. That's good, you're taking responsibility. I was so used to controlling my own life and then the relationship that it didn't take long before both of us unintentionally accepted that I might as well take on a lot of the responsibilities of his life, too. Unintentionally, I don't think so. You don't take control over somebody else's life unintentionally. That's crazy. You made decisions, intentional decisions, to control this person's life. Most likely because people like this, codependent caretakers, which it sounds like she may be, they tend to take control of other people's lives because they believe that in doing those things for that person will then give them love and will stay in the relationship. But, as she will continue to describe here, what ends up happening, especially with romantic relationships, is eventually the codependent caretaker becomes a martyr. And they begin to resent having the job that they signed up to do. Let's see, where was I? It was such a subtle change, no it wasn't, that I didn't even realize I was acting like a second mother to him until the relationship had already been ruined. Lady, this isn't the first time you did this. Your friendships are probably this way. You were probably like this in your job. When you're like this, when you are a codependent caretaker, you're like this in every facet of your life. It's not just something that only applies to personal relationships, to romantic relationships, because there's no way you can contain it. Number 4, he never called me out when I was wrong. This is a pet peeve of mine when it comes to women. How you are capable of writing this sentence. He never called me out when I was wrong. The fact that you know you were wrong and yet judge your partner for not calling you out on it, which, I mean, fair enough, is obscene to me. Are you doing things wrong or being wrong or being mean or whatever the issue is on purpose? If that's the case, then you have a problem. And the problem is not your partner for failing to call you out on it. Don't let women pull this crap. Don't let it happen. Yes, of course, call them out when they're wrong. But if you have to constantly or regularly tell a woman that she's wrong in the way she's behaving or treating you, I would run away from that woman. I'm a straight up jerk sometimes, and I know it. Wow. It's good that you know that about yourself. But the fact that you are a straight up jerk and you know it, and yet you judge people for not telling you that you're a jerk, that's an interesting cycle. That's a very vicious circle, and not the problem of other people, especially your poor, sad boyfriend. I'm lucky that I have friends and family members who put me in my place when I'm out of line, but my next ex never did. Again, that's the role of people who are close to us. When we are wrong and we don't know it, that's good. That's not what she's talking about. She knows that she's an a-hole, and she deliberately seems to behave like an a-hole and doesn't care and just expects other people to take responsibility for this and to put her in her place when she's behaving this way, which is crazy. It's not my responsibility to protect you from yourself. There were times when I felt myself being a complete ass to him, and instead of standing up for himself, he just apologized, even when he'd done nothing wrong, and did what he could to make me happy again. I started feeling bitter because I was starting to see that I was with someone who didn't respect himself or me enough to let me know when I was messing up. Yeah, he's probably afraid of you, I would imagine, because it sounds like you're abusive. People who are the victim of this kind of relationship abuse, especially if they're men, tend to feel incredibly powerless. And they don't know what to do other than to just stop the abuse. And as men, and this is something I'm going to continue to talk about on the channel, we have to learn to recognize when the behavior that women exhibit, like this woman, is abusive. And learn to not tolerate it. Because women can get away with a lot in our society. And amazing that because this guy didn't respect himself according to her standards, she decides to take it out on him. How does that make sense? How is that healthy? And let's remember, this entire article is framed as if like the boyfriend is the problem here. He's part of it, but not the real issue. Number 5, he could never make a decision. The response to any of my questions involving options was always, I don't know or I don't care. My ex had gotten used to taking the easy way out by letting me do all of the deciding. So when it came time to make minor decisions like where to go out to eat or who should be the one to take the dog to the vet, he never had anything to contribute. Yeah, because I would imagine there was never any space for him to make decisions. Because if he did make a decision, he would get criticized for it. It wouldn't be good enough. It would be wrong. So like, why bother? Whatever you want to do, honey, would be the typical response in that situation. Because it would never be, if I wanted to do something, if I wanted to do something, if I was the man in this scenario, it would be wrong. It wouldn't be good enough. It wouldn't make her happy, etc., etc. This is good. At first, it was just a strange quirk. But after a while, having to make all of the decisions for two people frustrated me beyond belief. It does not frustrate you, darling. Not at all. This is the way you live your life. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in these relationships with people like this. Number 6, the relationship felt unbalanced. I bet it did. I bet it did. Because you decided to turn your boyfriend into your child. I crave balance in my relationships. No, you don't. If you craved balance in your relationships, you wouldn't end up in these situations. This is ridiculous. She is incredibly unself-aware. And I sure wasn't getting it with my ex. Of course, his fault. I felt like I had all the power. And while that's something some people really love, it just made me uncomfortable. No, it doesn't. If it really made you uncomfortable, you wouldn't do it. This is what you're comfortable with because it does give you all the power. Because you want to be in control. I wanted to be with someone who was my equal. No, you don't. You would not know what to do if you met someone who was your equal. And someone who was your actual equal wouldn't put up with you. But it was clear after a while that my ex was too passive to stand beside me rather than behind me. I desperately wanted him to step up and be more assertive, but it never happened. Yeah, because it wouldn't be possible with you. This guy would need a lot of work on himself, a lot of help, and to get the hell away from you as fast as possible. Number 7, I felt like a nag. Yeah, because you probably were. I really hate being bossy. No, you don't. You admitted earlier that you are bossy. You don't hate it. If you actually hated it, you would try to stop. But what else was I supposed to do when my ex wouldn't do anything of importance unless I brought it up? What are we defining as important here? Is it calling his parents 10 minutes back? Is it calling his parents back 10 minutes after they left the voicemail message for him? What are we talking about? Because I would imagine, given everything that you've said, your interpretation or your standard for what's important is probably unrealistically high. Or maybe I should say unrealistically low, so that things that aren't really important are or seem to be to you. Rather than taking initiative, God help us, he left everything up to me, and before long, I started to feel like I was constantly correcting him, because you were. And I would imagine you probably were from the very beginning. It just didn't feel that way to you, because at the very beginning, what people like this do is they set this up at the outset, and they expect the other person to get the hint and to start being a different person. Which, when you think about it in those terms, is what? Crazy. All right, where was I? Our relationship had developed from me being the more assertive one. Oh my God. To me being the one who had to tell him to do everything if I wanted him to do it. I don't see how that's really different, but whatever. I felt like a horribly bossy version of myself, and I didn't like it one bit. That's just who you are, a horribly bossy woman. Which is okay, you can change that. You can change it. Doesn't have to be that way forever. Number 8, he couldn't do anything on his own. My ex became so dependent on me because you foster codependency. He seemed incapable of doing anything by himself. He needed me to double check to make sure that he was doing everything right, and that's when it started to hit me that this relationship had turned seriously unhealthy. Well, I'm glad it eventually occurred to you. That's progress, I guess. But I would imagine the reason he's coming to you is because to tell him that it's right is because if it wasn't right according to your standard, whatever that was, he would hear about it, and you would probably abuse the shit out of him. My assertiveness and his passiveness had collided and fed off each other until I developed a need to micromanage his life, and he developed a need to be micromanaged. Okay. I'm kind of repeating myself here. Number 9, the last one, thank God. I didn't like the person I became. This is the person you are. not the person you became. He didn't make you this way. This relationship did not make you this way. This is who you are. It doesn't have to be if you're committed to change, which honestly, I haven't gotten any sense of that at all here from reading any of this, other than maybe the idea that she needs to break up with her boyfriend in order to change, which will not solve anything. But it's already 20 minutes here, so let's see. By the time we finally had the sense to end the relationship, I was a different person than I'd been before. That's interesting. By the time we finally had the sense to end the relationship, I was a different person than I'd been before. No, that's not true. But even more interesting, the first half of that sentence, by the time we finally decided to end the relationship. I would be curious what that means. It's very non-specific, especially because of the way that she was kind of relatively more specific throughout the beginning of the article, or almost the entire rest of the article. Maybe he broke up with her. That would be interesting. He finally left, which is why she says we. I hope he did. I hope he finally grew some semblance of a spine and said, I'm getting the hell out of here. Woo! I was normally so good at being in relationships. I seriously doubt that, lady, but okay. But this time around, I knew that things had gone too far and turned me into a bit of a control freak. A bit of a control freak. That's like a polite euphemism, if I've ever heard one. Wow. I returned to normal pretty much right after we broke up. Jesus. But I took the whole relationship as a lesson to never again date someone who voluntarily gave me so much control over our partnership. Jesus Christ. That sentence. Oh my God. Oh my God. I returned to normal. Okay. I don't even want to say out loud that I'm going to take your word for it, but okay. Pretty much right after we broke up. But I took the whole relationship as a lesson to never again date someone who voluntarily gave me so much control over our partnership. That is the most convoluted way to deny responsibility for her role in the relationship that I've ever heard. Wow. That's impressive. I gotta say, like, really impressive. That shocked me. Really shocked me. Wow. Okay. Good stuff. Really, really good stuff. If you guys enjoy the video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you did not enjoy the video, which I guess is entirely possible, go ahead and hit the dislike button. Feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, and if you have any questions, concerns, stories, anecdotes you'd like me to read or analyze, go ahead and send them to my email address, therevolutionarymail@gmail.com. And I will see you all on the next one.